greet our friends everywhere with Chapter 22 of To Ask No Man, the story of George Mueller's incredible adventure with God. This is another in the series Stories of Great Christians, brought to you by the Moody Bible Institute of Chicago.
On June 18, 1849, I stood on top of Ashley Downs and watched them swarm up the hill. Henry Craik, I said to myself, that chap George Mueller has done it again. 300 orphans were marching toward the immense brick building that was going to be their new home. 120 old-timers from the Wilson Street houses and 180 new ones, recruited from who knows where, right out of the Bristol slums. Little girls in their white capes and their poke bonnets. Little boys in trim jackets with their visored caps square on their heads. Big girls in white pinafores over dark blue skirts. Big boys in long serge trousers. They looked angelic, but I jolly well knew they weren't. As they marched in the door past me, I saw one little fellow reach out and pinch the chap next to him hard.
Blimey, I'll get you for that!
Well, George.
Well, Henry, I didn't hope to see you here. I know how you are allergic to large quantities of small children.
Oh, not when they're reasonably clean and quiet, like they are today. Listen, old man, no matter what I've said, I wouldn't miss this day.
Quite a sight, 9, Henry. 300 of them. 300 children, Henry.
George, your new building's a beauty.
You've been inside?
Oh, upstairs and down. I've inspected the kitchen. I've fiddled with those extraordinary gas burners. I say you've got the most modern here.
Anything less would spoil this wonderful place.
Quite a magnificent structure. Plain and functional.
This craziness with the gingerbread and the gold trim. Bah. So it may be what's going today, but not to me. It's a sin. Nothing is beauty unless it has use. That's good architecture, Henry.
Bully for you. You're either behind the times or ahead of them. But never mind. Now, George, you've built a monument on top of Ashley Down.
A monument to God, Henry. All this brick is nothing but a monument to answered prayer.
I can't deny it, George. What you've done here, it's incredible, really.
3.5 years we prayed this land into what you see today, Henry.
3.5 years. It's a long time out of any man's life.
Yeah. When I first dreamed it out, my Lydia was a little girl, skipping about in the leaves and talking about finding big fields to play in.
She's a lady now. A grown-up, serious-minded young lady.
So serious. But such a dreamer. Almost 17. Dreaming about a husband, I suppose. So time goes. I don't get any younger either. Already 45.
So am I, George.
But who feels old? My back's strong. It's Mary I worry about. She won't slow down.
Look at her now.
Where?
Racing up the hill. Look at her hurrying along.
She carries twice as much as she should. Mary! Mary!
Hurrying as fast as I can, George. Got held up down on Wilson Street.
9. Stop hurrying. The heart.
Came along as fast as I could. I hadn't had all those blankets to carry.
Your husband thinks you work too hard, Mary.
Oh, that's ridiculous. I'm miserable unless I'm working. He knows that.
She made all those blankets and more, Henry, and on top speed most of the time. Stitch, 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 night and day. The only time I could get that woman to sit and talk with me was after supper. And then only because I plead my poor weak digestion. And she takes a little pity.
Well, I'm not going to get into this family squabble. Not after 18 years. I've some calls to make. God bless you both.
Wait, Henry. I'll have to take these blankets over.
9, Mary, 9. You don't go any place just yet. And neither do those blankets.
George,
Goodbye, you two.
Henry!
You stay right here with me, Mary. Rest.
But they need me.
9. I need you. So does God. He needs our thanks, Mary.
It is wonderful up here.
He's as faithful in the 1800s as he was 4,000 years ago. This proves it, Mary.
I'll never forget these last 3.5 years.
Who will?
The miracle of the shillings and the pounds, that's what we ought to call it.
Yeah. So many miracles. Remember them all?
Remember the time the sovereigns came, all wrapped up in a little brown paper package?
Yeah. And a woman who told me to sell her gold chain and her gold earrings.
And her lovely gold brooch.
And the day somebody sent £120, and I got down on my knees to thank him for it, and the doorbell rang.
And before you could get up from your knees, I'd taken in a letter with £200.
Yeah. And pretty soon, he sent all we asked for. Well, Mary, there's our orphanage. And our orphans. All 300 of them. It's all done now.
Mr. Mueller! Mr. Mueller!
Who's that?
I think it's Mrs. Thromley.
Oh, Mr. Mueller, I looked all over for you. There can't none of us figure out those gas burners. Nobody but you knows how. And the water on the third floor.
We'd better go on over, George.
And Mrs. Mueller, Mum, the junior girls can't find their blouses nowhere. Do you suppose...
Of course. George, what's wrong?
I was wrong. I said it was all done, but it isn't. It isn't all done yet.
No, it isn't. Do you know, George, I don't think it ever will be.
For the next 2.5 years, his new orphanage took up every minute of George's waking days, and rather most of his evenings. He'd almost tripled the number of children, and his staff now numbered 55. He was at Ashley Downs every day, and a good many evenings, too. I saw jolly little of him those days. Neither did the church. In fact, neither did Mary and Lydia. But then one night in early March 1851, George burst into my study, and what he told me was quite a shocker. Now sit down, old man. Drink up your tea and calm down, and then begin all over again.
You think I'm not serious, Henry? You think it will all blow over?
Well, that's what I'm hoping.
Hoping? I don't know if I confide in you. Never do I get the understanding that I want. Never.
A little tea, George.
No. You think I'm jesting when I say I've made up my mind to build another orphanage. You think I jest when I say I will stop at nothing less than 1,000 orphans. Well, I don't jest.
George, I want to ask you some rather direct questions. What does Mary say? What does she think of rushing into this so soon after the other?
Mary?
Your wife.
I haven't told her.
You haven't told Mary?
This is too big. I find his will first. Henry, for 4 months now I pray. I don't want a single outside influence. Everything had to be clear for God to show me his will.
And now?
I am sure. So I tell you, Mary next.
So that's it. Old man, I'm going to talk frankly. Call me an outside influence if you want. But for 20 years I've been frightfully discreet. Now I'm sick of it. Somebody has to talk to you, and it may as well be me.
Oh, never do you understand.
George, if you try to take on 1,000 orphans, you'll be beyond your limit.
How?
Spiritually.
What?
For a change, I'll quote scripture to you. That verse, "For I say through the grace given unto me to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think." George, talk about asking God for another orphanage is just spiritual cockiness.
Nine. He will bear me up. All these years I survived the difficulties. With every fresh one, I look for increased faith.
Old man, there comes a limit.
9. I don't reach my limit of spiritual measure yet.
Then physically, there's a limit to a man's strength.
Nonsense. When I think that the German army turned me down, I laugh. Why, Henry, for 16 years, I've carried on the management of the home, single-handed. Every 52 weeks, I write 3,000 letters.
There's a limit.
And how can we say where it is? When the work still grows, I can't set limits. Henry, 15 years ago, 1 home. 13 years ago, 2 homes. 7 years ago, 4 rented homes.
I know.
5 years ago, Ashley Downs. And now, Henry, don't talk about limits to me.
Then be practical. Where will you get the money for building this new place?
Why, from...
And for maintaining it? Have you thought about costs?
Henry, whatever else, I am a cool, calculating businessman. I count costs. It will take £3,500 to build my house, and it will cost about £1,500 to maintain it.
Every year?
Yeah, every year. And God will give us the money like he gave us the basket of bread 12 years ago on Wilson Street. Look what he's done already. He will also build the biggest home yet.
Oh, but George, when will you stop? You have to stop somewhere.
Suppose when we had 2-day schools, we said stop. That'd be nothing more. But we didn't. Do you know what this means?
I have an idea.
10,000 children and grown-ups under our instruction in 6 charity schools. 600 orphans already brought up in the homes. More than 100,000 tracts distributed all over the world. 40 preachers of the gospel with our scriptural knowledge institution. And my house for 300 orphans.
You've made up your mind?
Yeah, Henry. George Mueller labors on to bring still greater glory to the name of the Lord. That the Lord may be looked at, magnified, admired, trusted in, and relied on at all times for everything. That's my aim, Henry Craig. And that's why I build up still larger orphanages.
Yes, George had quite made up that German mind of his, and I could have sooner changed the course of the Rhine River. His goal, 1,000 orphans on Ashley Downs. For the next 4 years, he sank every shilling he could spare into what he called his building fund. Finally, he had enough, and so he started negotiating for more land on Ashley Down. In March 1855, he went out in the Downs with the Bristol agent.
Just down this way a little farther now.
Nasty business hiking through all this March mud.
Here we are. There, that's it.
Where?
That one right there. The lot begins down over there and extends right up to the orphanage. That is what your records show, no?
Have to check. If the blamed wind up here doesn't snatch them out of my... Come back here. Yes, that's all right. There to there.
Can't you see it now?
What?
It's brick, like the first one, naturally, but maybe just a little bit gentler about the roof. Not fancy, nine, but gables. They go just so. 6 or 8 small pillars, maybe. The rest is plain.
What are you looking at?
My new orphanage, what I built on this lot. From here to here. 4 years now I've had my eye on. I know just what the new house will look like. But I wait till now, till I have the money and can buy
Mr. Mueller, I hate to disappoint you, but...
But now I have it, and so there will be another...
Money won't do you any good.
I don't understand. This land's in your book. There's nothing built on it.
That's right. But you can't build on it either. I was afraid this was the lot before you got me up here.
I can't build. Why not?
Because of the owner.
Well, I talked to the owner. Play with him.
Afraid that might be a little difficult, Mr. Mueller. The owner is dead.
Dead? But what's the trouble?
Unfortunately, he left a will. It's a custom in England.
Yeah.
He put this land in trust. It cannot be sold or leased for 100 years.
And so we conclude Chapter 22 of To Ask No Man, the story of George Mueller's incredible adventure with God. This is another in the series Stories of Great Christians, which come to you transcribed from the Moody Bible Institute of Chicago.